And Nigeria's foreign exchange market has undergone significant changes in recent times, with the CBN introducing reforms to stabilize the market and promote economic growth. But while challenges remain, the reforms have had a positive impact on the market, reducing currency fluctuations. As the market continues to evolve, experts charge the CBN to maintain its commitment to transparency and efficiency, ensuring that Nigeria's economy remains attractive to foreign investors. Let's get on this. And I'm being joined live from Lagos, Lekki in Lagos, by the Director of Research and Strategy. He works with Chapel Hill, Denham, Mr. Tajuddin Ibrahim. Good afternoon, Mr. Ibrahim. It's good to have you on the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Yes, after weeks of volatility, let me call it that, we see a level of stability in the market. It's been between 1,450, 1,500 in recent time. I think sometime yesterday it touched 1,500 naira. But we've seen a bit of stability in that market. You've been following the market and we've been talking about it. What really would you tell us is happening at this time with regards to the foreign exchange market? Is it a fallout of policies instituted by the Cardoso-led CBN?
So, well, what is happening in the market within the past 3 weeks has been largely due to the fact that we do not have much demand in the market. We recognize the fact that market is driven by the forces of demand and supply. And within the past 3 weeks, what we have seen in the currency market is that market participants were not really making demand. And that was likely because they anticipate that the Nigerian naira will appreciate against the US dollar. So, largely speaking, that explains the stability that we've witnessed in the past, sort of 2 to 3 weeks. But the reality actually is that has also reflected on the volume of trades that we have seen in that market, talking about NAFEM window in this case. So we have within the past 1 week, for instance, we have seen the volume of transactions moderate by about 28%. But the broad market expectation is positive in the sense that the CBN is doing something around ensuring an improvement in liquidity. It is positive in the sense that we have a pipeline of expected US dollars inflow into the economy that can underpin the FX reserves and bolster the ability of the CBN to supply to the market. And the latest development is around the international money transfer operators, the IMTOs, who the CBN has said, can now sell to the official market or sell to the, to their banks, through the NAFEM window. I think that's another positive development that the market is going to price into the Nigerian naira in the coming weeks. But for now, we haven't, seen anything happen. But all those indicators are positive on a forward-looking basis.
This figure looks good. Inflow for Q1 of 2024, 24 billion US dollars. That's according to the Apex Bank governor, though. But my question really would be, there seems to be an increase in inflows from Nigerians in the diaspora. I think you touched on that in your first submission. But does this mean that the confidence that used to be is returning back? Are we getting back to the post-COVID era where that investors' confidence was so solid with regards to Nigeria's economy?
I think the investors' confidence is somewhat, getting back. And, it is getting back, largely speaking, on the back of the, collaboration of the fiscal authority and the monetary authority in terms of, policy. The fiscal authority, for instance, is looking to finance the budget Nevertheless, they recognize that, it has to be, at high interest rates by, borrowing from the financial market. At the same time, we have the monetary authority, that is bent on fighting inflation by, hiking interest rates. So which means the two authorities are on the same page in terms of the direction of travel of interest rates. That in itself is a signal that, the Nigerian market is ready for investors, either, local or foreign investors. And that, largely speaking, is the driver of the increase in inflows that we are seeing into the, the financial market, or let me say into the capital market in terms of foreign investment. And when you talk about, diaspora inflows, what the CBN is doing is positive in that direction. Those IMTOs that are registered and recognized by the CBN have now been allowed to sell US dollars to the market. So we are seeing those remittances come in. Previously, those remittances were coming in. It is not that they were not coming in, but they were not being captured to a large extent in the official market. But this time, the case is becoming positively different as the CBN is looking to ensure that inflows from the diasporas are captured in the official market. And if that is the case, the outlook is positive in terms of an increase in supply of FX to the FX market. And I think all those elements are the drivers of the positive development we are seeing in the market this week so far.
Interestingly, let's touch on the BDCs, because most times that argument that they also have a role to play in this value chain remains very important, Mr. Ibrahim. But I guess the CBN for some time now have not been giving effects to the BDCs. I'm sure they have their reasons for that. And there's also this aspect of it that they want them to reapply for their licenses and all of that. But what do you really think, in your understanding and dealings for some time, about the role of the BDCs in helping to address some challenges in this market? Because many will say at times they're always the last resort. When you don't have a choice, many run to the other market.
So absolutely correct. The BDCs are very important in the the Nigerian FX market. They have in the past played very important roles in terms of underpinning the overall liquidity in the FX market, particularly from a demand standpoint. So when we take a look at retail demand of Nigerians in terms of FX, the BDCs are very important, and they help to get the supply to the end users. So this is where they are important. And I reckon that when we have a period of stability, the BDCs in the past had been supportive. Nevertheless, not all of them were playing the game according to the rules and regulations. That is the reason that the CBN said all of them have to recapitalize. All of them have to reapply for licenses, and those licenses are different, and they have a reflection of where you can operate across the country. So the reason that the CBN has not sold in recent months to the BDCs is because they want them to reapply. And I will see what the CBN is doing in that regard as a form of house cleaning. The house has to be cleaned first. After that, I believe the CBN will go back to begin to sell to them. Don't forget that when the CBN returned to the market, like February, March, to begin to sell to the BDCs, we had relative stability in the currency. Even at some point, the currency appreciated. So we need to bring them back, but for them to come back, they have to come back more efficiently, they have to come back much stronger, they have to come back in a manner that we have not too many BDCs, for the CBN to efficiently monitor, supervise, and regulate that segment of the foreign currency market. I think those are the positive things we should watch out for within the next few months.
Mr. Taj, let's shift our attention to the non-oil space. There's also this argument in some quarters that we must improve exports if we are to bridge this gap that we see, of course, in our FX market and, of course, with our currency. And it's been a while now. We've talked about export promotion. What more are we doing with regards to promoting that angle that can help us generate FX other than the sale of crude oil, which has predominantly taken charge of all our FX revenue generation?
So, awesome point. And I think, one thing that I had to talk about is the functions of both the fiscal authority and the monetary authority. Everything that I've discussed, before now is an indication of what the monetary authority has done around ensuring that we have, stable FX. When we talk about, exporting non-oil products for us to generate higher FX inflows, that aspect of discussion sits with the fiscal authority. And in this case, if we really want to look beyond oil, we have to look at, mining, for instance. We have to look at, other goods and commodities such as gold. We have to consider, some other products such as steel and all these natural resources that, we can find in Nigeria. But the reality is that we need huge investment for us to, to benefit from all those, elements. And the investments I'm talking about are in billions of dollars. And it is those investments, when we get them, not necessarily from local sources, but we should be able, as a government, be able to attract foreign investors into the mining sector, for instance. So when we have that, we will be talking about, extraction. We will be talking about, adding value to all those products that we extract before they are exported. I think that there is a huge opportunity in the mining sector in this regard. When we talk about manufacturing, the opportunity to my mind is limited. Limited because we have plenty infrastructure challenges. And one of the challenges to my mind is power sector issues, which is making most manufactured products to cut at very high cost. So little production in that regard, and also little to export. I think a good starting point for the government could be the mining sector, but we need a lot of investment to go into that space for us to see more inflows in terms of export of non-oil products out of the country to earn a lot more FX inflows for the economy.
I'd like to ask how we can also make that space mining that you mentioned more attractive, creating incentives and all of that. I think that's very important on one side. I would also like to ask you that what do you think, or how much more of our support or of initiatives are you expecting from the central bank to continue to maintain this tempo, at least for now, so that we don't shoot above what it used to be? At the time, we got to about 1,900 naira. So it's like a two-in-one question. What more are you expecting from the Apex Bank? And also, what more can we do to open up the mining space and all those other spaces that you're talking about that can give opportunities for us to generate FX? I think with the gold bar that was presented to the president, money is already coming into the federal government's purse.
So absolutely right. So if we go back to the monetary authority space, how much more can the CBN do? I think what the CBN can do is to, number one, accelerate the process of, relicensing, the relicensing of the BDC operators. When they accelerate that process, we will have, a number of BDCs that are already licensed, and then the CBN can return to the sale of FX, to the BDCs, and that, to a large extent, to my mind, can support the stability and possibly appreciation of the FX, of the naira against the US dollars. If we go back to the fiscal authority, to the government in this case, I think one thing that the government needs to do is to also accelerate investment flows into the mining sector. Let us see, investment, flows, and the way to see investment flows is for you to make it easy for investors to go into that space, and also introduce incentives in form of taxes. It will look like a new sector and a new set of investment opportunity. So you need to encourage local investors to put capital, to direct capital to that sector. Also, very importantly to my mind is foreign investors should also be invited and encouraged, to invest in that sector. Then we will begin to talk about, exporting, from that sector from like possibly next year, to my mind, or at the latest within the next 2 years. And it will be accretive to our FX reserves. It will be accretive to what we do in the non-oil, sector. Don't forget that if we do this kind of an investment, we will have the positive impact around job creation. We will have the positive impact around, the growing or the growth of the financial sector, particularly the pension industry in this case, because when you create formal job, you also grow the pension industry indirectly, in my view.
Sounds really good. But let's look down the lane. It's ahead of H1, of course, by the end of this week. So we move to half year 2 as we start the month of July. What is your outlook for the entire market moving on the second half of the year, considering challenges of the first half of the year?
So I think for the second half of the year, I would say the glass is half full and not half empty, considering the fact that we have gone through a lot of turbulence in the first half, trying to put in place reforms in the economy, put in place reforms in the financial markets, talking about the FX market in this case. So the second half looks to me like a period that Nigerians can expect the dividends of some of these reforms that have been put in place by the relevant authorities. I believe that if we look at the debt capital market, for instance, the outlook to my mind is a situation where we would have, the interest rate level moderate somewhat towards the end of the second half, largely because of, much or slightly lower inflation. The headwinds to my mind will not be as high as, we saw in the first half. If we look at the equities market, I think, the investors can expect stability, and also a lot of activities around capital raising by the banks and also by some consumer, goods sector companies. If we look at FX, I think the second half, we are most likely going to see one of two things. It is either we see stability of the currency, or we see the currency, the naira in this case, appreciate against the US dollars. And that's, to my mind, will be because of the efforts by the CBN around ensuring an increase in inflows. The government is going to earn more inflows of FX on the back of sale of assets. I bear in mind that there is at least $1 billion to be generated from the sale of power assets. Most likely will happen in the second half. That, to my mind, is positive around in terms of FX. So I think FX outlook for the second half looks positive in my view.
It's a good way to leave it. I must thank you so much, Director, Research and Strategy, Chapel Hill, Denham, Mr. Tajuddin Ibrahim. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
And you too.
Coming up,